Linda had always been the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood, a role no one asked her to play, but one she wore like a badge of honor. She saw herself as the last line of defense against anything or anyone she deemed out of place. But her so-called vigilance had crossed into obsession the day a new homeowner moved into the house across the street. Derek Walker was everything Linda feared: successful, confident, and, most unsettling to her, black. In her narrow mind, there was simply no way a black man could afford a home in their upscale neighborhood without some shady dealings. She didn't have proof. She didn't need it. Her bias was evidence enough. At first, she just observed from behind her cream-colored curtains, peeking through the slats as Derek went about his life. She memorized his routines: when he left for work, when he came back, and when the house sat empty, ripe for inspection. Each day, she scribbled notes in a little spiral-bound notebook she titled Neighborhood Watch. But passive observation wasn't enough for Linda. She needed proof. Something, anything, to validate the growing narrative in her mind. One morning, after watching Derek drive off in his silver SUV, Linda saw her opportunity. She grabbed her handbag, slipped on her pink house slippers, and walked across the street, her heart racing not with fear, but with the intoxicating thrill of doing the right thing. Reaching Derek's front porch, she glanced around to make sure no one was watching. Then, from the depths of her bag, she pulled out a key. Where she got it, that didn't matter, not to her. Whether she'd snagged it from under a doormat one day, copied it from a neighbor, or found some backdoor way to obtain it, she justified it all in the name of neighborhood safety. The key slid into the lock. Click! The door opened. Linda stepped inside, the sterile scent of lemon cleaner hitting her nose. Her heart pounded, but it wasn't fear, it was adrenaline. She was convinced this was her moment. The moment she would uncover Derek's dark secret. The living room was immaculate. A modern sofa, glass coffee table, a neat stack of books. Nothing out of the ordinary. She ran her fingers along the coffee table, lifting up papers, scanning bills, rifling through anything within reach. Nothing. She moved to the kitchen, opened drawers, checked the fridge, flipped through a notepad on the counter. She took pictures of anything she thought might later look incriminating: bank statements, utility bills, a laptop left on the dining table. She even opened the mail sitting on the entryway console, hands trembling with anticipation. But there was nothing illegal, nothing suspicious. To Linda, though, the very fact that everything seemed so normal felt like a cover-up. Before long, she realized she needed to leave before Derek returned. She carefully reset everything, though not perfectly, and slipped out, locking the door behind her. But this wouldn't be her last visit. Over the next few weeks, Linda returned whenever Derek was away. Each time, she dug deeper, through closets, drawers, files, desperately seeking the truth she was sure was hidden somewhere in his home. But Derek wasn't oblivious. At first, it was subtle, small things out of place. His mail shuffled oddly, a drawer slightly ajar, his house keys sitting just an inch away from where he usually left them. He brushed it off at first, convincing himself he was just being paranoid. But that creeping feeling grew stronger, gnawing at him. Something was wrong. One evening, as Derek sorted through his bills, he noticed that the pile was slightly askew. An envelope opened and poorly resealed. That was it. He couldn't dismiss it any longer. The next morning, Derek bought a small security camera, something discreet, easy to install. He positioned it near the front door, angled just right to capture anyone entering. The following day, he left for work as usual. When he returned that evening, he pulled up the footage on his phone. And there she was, clear as day. Linda, his neighbor. She stood at his front door, casually pulled out a key, and unlocked the door like it was hers. He watched, jaw clenched, as she stepped inside and began her search. His blood boiled. She had been in his home, his private space, multiple times. And worse, she thought she could get away with it. But she wouldn't. The next day, Derek changed all the locks on his house. New keys, new codes. Linda would never get back in. But Linda didn't take kindly to being shut out. That afternoon, Linda noticed the locksmith van outside Derek's house. From behind her blinds, she watched as Derek knelt by his front door, carefully swapping the old lock for the new one. Rage bubbled inside her. What was he hiding? Throwing on a light sweater and her slippers, she stormed across the street. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" she snapped, planting herself between Derek and his front door. He barely looked up. "Changing my lock." Her jaw tightened. "Why? Where are you hiding?" Derek stood, dusting off his hands. "It's my house, Linda. I don't owe you an explanation." But Linda was relentless. "You're acting suspicious. I'm calling the police." Before Derek could respond, she was dialing 911. "Yes, there's a suspicious man tampering with a house on my street," she said, her voice trembling with fake fear. "I think he's breaking in." Derek chuckled bitterly. He saw where this was going. Sirens wailed in the distance within minutes. 2 officers arrived. Officer Jenkins, a tall, seasoned cop with skeptical eyes, and Officer Rivera, a younger officer with a sharp, no-nonsense demeanor. Linda waved them over wildly. "Officers, thank God you're here. He's breaking into that house." Officer Jenkins turned to Derek. "Sir, can you explain what's going on here?" Derek stayed calm. "This is my house. I'm changing my locks because someone's been breaking in." Linda gasped theatrically. "That's a lie. He's up to something shady." Officer Rivera raised a brow. "Do you have proof that you live here?" Without missing a beat, Derek pulled out his driver's license and a utility bill, both with his name and address. The officers examined the documents. "He's telling the truth, ma'am," Officer Jenkins confirmed. But Derek wasn't finished. "I also have security footage," he added. "Want to see who's been breaking in?" Before Linda could protest, Derek pulled out his phone, queuing up the video. The officers watched silently as the footage played. There was Linda, unlocking the front door, snooping through his belongings. Officer Rivera exhaled sharply. "Ma'am, care to explain this?" Linda's face paled. This is fake. He set me up." But the officers weren't buying it. "Dispatch," Officer Jenkins called over his radio. "Run a background check on a Linda Grayson." The reply came moments later. "Confirmed. Linda Grayson, prior charges for trespassing and theft. Currently on probation." Silence. Officer Jenkins's hand hovered near his handcuffs. "Ma'am, violating probation is a serious offense." Linda panicked. "No, I was protecting the neighborhood. He's the criminal." But her words fell flat as Officer Rivera cuffed her hands behind her back. "You have the right to remain silent," Rivera began, her voice monotone. Derek watched, arms crossed, as they led Linda to the squad car. For once, justice had been served. And Linda? She got exactly what she deserved.